Hi everyone, it's Kate from the Vogue line. I am back this week to talk all things Sewing Bee. It was week 3, Icons week. Now, before I get into everything, last week I said that I was going to be able to show you pictures of the finished garments and that the BBC had released these. We're going to release these each week. This has not turned out to be the case. So unfortunately, we are back to where we were before, but I was very excited for a week where we thought we were going to be able to show you that, but sadly not. Anyway, let's get going. So I've got my Patrick and Esme dolls here. For anyone who missed them last week, I've got these really beautiful, let me show you, little dolls. They're here to give us guidance. Esme might, fall asleep halfway through if she gets bored of me talking. But yeah, these are beautiful. If you do, we've got, I'll pop a link down below if you wanted one. Mel has added this beautiful design to them. They're so great. So if you would like one, I'll pop a link. Right, Esme, you can go back here. So the first challenge, the technical challenge, was the Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress. Like, really iconic. Everyone, I'm sure everyone has heard of this. Jersey wrap. I mean, it's the classic wrap jersey dress. This is great because we're quite excited about this because we actually have the perfect pattern, and it's a Vogue V2000, and it's actually Diane von Furstenberg. So this is the original wrap dress that you can actually buy the proper pattern of. They re-released it, I think it was last year or the year before. I mean, it's amazing. I feel like everyone should just have one as a kind of piece of history. It's amazing that they're still able, you could actually buy this and make it if you wanted to. Everything that I talk about, I'll pop a link down below to, so if you did want to have a closer look at anything, you can go ahead. So yeah, we're really excited because that's like an absolute bang on perfect option. So if you did ever want to make that kind of classic jersey wrap dress, you can get it a proper one, a designer one. So the second challenge was the upcycling challenge, and this actually was really fun. So they were given, I think it was 2 or 3 pieces of homeware items, so blankets, curtains, that sort of thing, upholstery fabrics, and they had to make an outfit inspired by Vivienne Westwood. A lot of the blankets, there was lots of tartans, as you would expect. And yeah, they actually created really interesting things this week. I thought it was a really good brief, and they were really good kind of materials to work with this time. So I thought it was everything they came up with was really interesting. So that was the second challenge. And then the made to measure one was, I was unsure when we heard it last week. I was like, is this going to be, you get to pick an icon and make an outfit for them? But it was actually, they had to make an outfit inspired by the Versace brand, and it was really good actually. They produced really beautiful items and all really different, and yeah, I loved it. So we're going to get started, and I'm going to start with the one that actually I found the hardest, and I would like your help. So first one, Kaz. So Kaz did, which I thought was a very risky move, but it definitely paid off because it came out beautifully, did a Versace-inspired dress based on The Wizard of Oz and Dorothy's gingham dress. And you could tell when she told Esme and Patrick at the beginning that they were not feeling the vibe of this at all. Their faces, and I have to say I was a bit worried for Kaz, but she absolutely nailed it. Really interesting, kind of like almost like a square cut pinafore with loads of straps and gold button details, and then this skirt that kind of twisted. It was really clever and interesting. We could not, for the love of us, find a pattern. We looked for, I think for Kaz, I might have spent 45 minutes looking for a pattern, and I just couldn't find anything that felt anywhere similar. So I would love to hear your thoughts. If you can think of something, I just want to know. So let us know, because that's the one we failed on. So I thought I'd start with the one that we didn't do that well on. I will also apologise if you can hear a little child refusing to have their breakfast. So there might be some shouting that is coming our way in the next 5 minutes. So next up we have got Dan. So Dan did a dress that was inspired, that iconic J-Lo dress, the kind of green one with all the prints on. His version was quite extreme actually. There was a lot less skirt than I thought there was going to be. Again, we struggled a bit with this one. I found a dress that I felt had the feeling of that J-Lo dress, that super, because it's so low cut, it comes down basically almost down to your waist. It's got slits up the side. So I basically picked something that I feel like is closer to the original dress, but potentially slightly less close to Dan's. So it's the Vogue 1953. You can see when I show you it's got that really low cut panel, it's got a split in the side, which his did, and it just feels quite sort of similar. It actually feels very much like that Marilyn Monroe dress almost, but that was such a 70s, like that kind of really deep cut at the front. So that was the one we picked. I will add also anyone's thoughts and let us know, because this is just a discussion. If you've got a better pattern option, like last week everyone suggested a different hoodie that I'd put in, and which was much better match. So you know, this is a discussion. This is not a, you know, it's not me saying this is right. This is my thoughts on last night. So next up we've got Gainer. Absolutely delighted with this one because I'm pretty sure this is I know this one's right. So hers was this kind of off the shoulder. The core detail of it was this kind of big cutout detail that was kind of quite kind of subtle around the front, and then this big cutout detail at the back of the dress. So we found the Simplicity 9885. I'm nearly 100% sure this one is correct. Because I feel like she didn't defer too much from the actual pattern, that I'm fairly sure this one was right. The one shoulder, the cutout, the fact that the cutout detail is much deeper at the back. So yes, I'm fairly sure that this one is the one that Gainer used, which is great. Then we've got Glendora, and she made this sort of high-necked dress. It was long, quite slinky, made in a kind of satin, which, to be honest, when I saw that she was doing that, I was like, oh gosh, I hope you can't hide with satin. It's just if there's any little error, it's like ah. So I was stressed already when I saw what she was making it out of. But I thought it worked really well actually. I think it was a great one. So pattern wise, and I'm pretty sure this one is right as well, it's a Simplicity S8330. This dress has actually been, I think, almost in every series this dress gets featured. Such a sort of classic shape. So it's got this high neckline, little princess seams, which hers had, a waist seam, which hers also had, and I just feel like it just felt very close. So I'm fairly sure that one is right. But again, thoughts and feelings, let me know. So I was quite pleased with the Glendora. Then we had Jess. This was quite a full-on one. As soon as we saw it, we were like, oh my gosh. So it was a cowl neck dress. Then underneath the cowl neck, she had this sort of ribbon detail that looked like a kind of corset, but it obviously wasn't corset. It was just a sort of feeling of a corset. And then she had this sort of quite kind of interesting skirt. It wasn't a straight hem. It was slightly kind of, everything was off center. It was quite interesting. As soon as we saw it, we were like, okay, I can see that it's a skirt and a top. So let's look for 2 items, and then we'll just have to kind of see what we can find. But actually it was quite pleased with what we did find. So for the top, that cowl neck top, I think she potentially could have used the Mason Sicily slip dress and top. You could just cut it off. It's got the same very thin straps. It's got a really good amount of cowl on it, which hers had. And so I felt like that was a really good base for the top. For the skirt, there were a couple of patterns, but we ended up picking, it's an old one. It's a Vogue 1683. And I just felt like the hem was all different lengths and it felt like it had that kind of same feel. I don't think it's the exact one, but if you wanted to recreate something like that, it felt like it had that sort of flow to it. It's actually a really interesting pattern, so if you haven't seen it, go and check it out. But yeah, so I felt like those two together was quite close to what Jess made. Then we had Kit. So his outfit was interesting. So it was modelled on a man, but it felt like a kind of evening, I guess, was it a dress? I think it was a dress, or was it dress and top? I can't quite remember now. So it had this sort of tank feel to it. And then the kind of core detail of the skirt was that it was a dropped hem. So it is shorter at the front and longer at the back. Now we found a pattern, again, not perfect, but it has the feel. We thought the Flora dress from By Hand London worked quite well because it had that drop at the back. It was not as exaggerated as Kit's. So you might, if you wanted to kind of recreate that, make it a bit, the dip at the back a bit longer. But I think his was really interesting because the top of the fabric was black and the underside was a kind of gold. So you could really see the kind of, I thought the fabric choice was really clever. And he does pick, I think he picks really interesting fabrics. I did notice that in the first one, he picked this sort of lame jersey, and it's much harder to work with than a traditional jersey. And I just thought, yeah, he can handle fabric really well. Anyway, I thought that one was a kind of nod to it. Novello, this was also a bit of a tricky one. And again, I didn't think it was going to be as hard as it was. I could see that some of it was self-drafted. So the core detail was this sort of one shouldered top with draping. It was all kind of pleated up to the top. Ooh, Esme, she does not agree with me on this. Every time she falls off, it's basically like her shouting at me. Yes, this sort of one shoulder, and then it had this sort of kind of skirt with these kind of big, obviously self-drafted big pockets. I thought this was going to be easier to find than it was. So what I ended up finding was a vintage pattern, and it is, I think it was the Simplicity, it is 8392. You can still buy these online, so if you did really like it, but it had that same feeling, that sort of drape to one shoulder, and I thought that would be a kind of good base if you really liked that. Next up, we've got Orla, and I think we did all right with this. Again, thoughts on a postcard. So she made this sort of corseted top. It was a square neckline, thin little straps. The core detail, it had this kind of V detail at the front of it, and then she'd made this long skirt with slits up the front. So I think we did okay on this one. The Fibre Mood Gedda skirt was the skirt that I found. I thought I was going to find loads of long skirts that had seams at the front that you could add slits into. This was not the case. And I searched for a long time, and I felt like this Fibre Mood one was probably the best one that you're going to find. You'd have to add in the splits to it. Then for the little corseted top, the Vicky So's Tally Bustier I thought was a really good option. I know that her corset was actually cut slightly longer, but that one's got the V shape. So again, if anyone's got any thoughts on that, let us know. Then we had Stuart, who Rachel and I thought was going to be quite easy to find, and actually was very tricky. So he had made this sort of, again, tricky fabric choices with him, a kind of satin, it's a kind of strappy dress, and the core feature of it was it had this sort of kind of cut out shape going all the way down and kind of swooped all the way down. He inserted a different fabric in this cutout. So after after listening to him, because I went back and rewatched it, I listened to him talk about it. I was pretty sure that that kind of swooping detail that went down the dress, he cut it in himself. So then I stopped looking for that shape. I just looked for the actual kind of core silhouette of the dress, because I'm pretty sure then he added that on. So we found the McCall's 8475. I thought this worked really well. It looked really similar. It had the same seam lines. It had a crossover detail at the back. So that one felt really close. I think it might not be perfect, but it was a very close match. And I did look through a lot of strappy dress patterns, and this was the one that I felt was the closest, having gone back and had a re-watch. And then last but not least was Yasmin. Now hers was absolutely amazing. I loved it. It was quite kind of like simple dress, and then it had this sort of like bondage strap details over the front. I thought it was beautifully done. Rachel and I looked and we decided, because obviously that strapping part was self-drafted, so we went for a dress that had the same sort of feel with the kind of cutouts. So we picked the Vogue 1951, which felt kind of similar, obviously not perfect because you haven't got all of that strapping, but a similar sort of feel in terms of the cutout details and the interest in it. So that would be a good option. I feel like now I've gone through, I don't know if we did that well this week, but we definitely tried this. This year is definitely a little bit more tricky. I think there's a lot more self-drafting. It's going to be an interesting one as we go further into this. But let me know your thoughts. Patrick and Esme say thank you for joining us, and we will be back next week with another video. Have a lovely rest of your week. Bye.